Are you concerned when certain judges or people running for DA say that accommodations on sentencing should be made on race? Does that bother you?
Who said that? I've never heard that before.
Well, people in law schools have been saying it.
Well, I mean, students have always
Kim
been...
Fox in Chicago has heavily implied that communities of color need to be accommodated for in sentencing. And they've all but done this by just getting rid of the bail laws that we've seen altogether, right?
I mean,
decriminalizing shoplifting, all that, please.
Oh, I'm totally okay with that. We lock way too many people up, just flat out. That's not even...
So like murder out the next day?
No, not murder. You said shoplifting.
Well, I'm just saying, just the bail reform laws in New Mexico and California have been a disaster.
Well, I can't speak to it. Oh, sorry.
No, here's actually a really great point. It's a tough one for me. I agree. I think we lock way too many people up. I err on the side of liberty, innocent until proven guilty. To take a working class individual who is accused of shoplifting before he's even been proven of guilt, lock him up for several months, he loses his job. However, what do we see in San Francisco? Mm-hmm. Wave of shoplifting, businesses shutting down because when you don't stop the crime, you get, I guess, a lot of crime.
Yeah,
it's a tough issue. I wanted to let you guys.
I think we'll totally disagree on this. You first.
Maybe. Well, I've read a lot on recidivism. We have a fairly high recidivism rate in this country because really the thing that causes crime more than anything else, it's not actually poverty, it's income inequality. When poor people and rich people share the same space, it leads to a lot of problems. All poor people together in a neighborhood, what is there to steal? Poor people and rich people together in a neighborhood, there you go. You have very clean targets. And what's more, there are other forms of criminality that only really fully express themselves in the types of neighborhoods that have a really strong mix of wealthy and poor. I can see that because, again, from where I grew up, I lived on the border of a lot of low-income communities. Now, Beverly Hills, safest place you could be. 3 a.m., you want to take a jog, go for it. Seriously.
Not anymore.
Maybe. Oh, I haven't been there in like 5 years.
You'd be surprised, man.
I'll say this.
Good luck walking Rodeo Drive now.
Well, okay, first on, I don't want to walk Rodeo Drive during the daylight, okay?
Well, I agree.
I agree.
After Garcon has had his work in L.A., it's a disaster.
Violent crime is down since the 90s. We've had a bit of an up since COVID.
It's up massive in the last year.
Oh, well, COVID's led to a lot of really weird exigent factors. But
defunding the police.
We haven't defunded the police anywhere.
Minneapolis?
Maybe in a couple places.
A lot of places.
Hold on a second. That's not true. Minneapolis, Portland, Seattle, they've all cut police budgets.
260 departments, I think it was reported last year, had stripped their funding from
Sorry,
departments.
when you said defund, I meant like the anarchist vision of like community policing. When it comes to police funds being stripped, there is a conversation to be had about the relationship between that and crime. But the crime increase seems to be all countrywide, so I don't know if I'd be leaning more towards that being a COVID thing and people being restless and angry and, I don't know, aggressive. The thing that I'm trying to say, though, is when I grew up in Beverly Hills, really, really safe, free from violent crime. I could walk half a mile, though, and the area between rich and poor were the areas where people had barred windows. Every time. So when it comes to criminality, there are things that we can address very fundamentally that will help everyone. I'm sure there are restructures to bail laws that we could do. I don't know the particulars. It's not my field. I've also read stuff on recidivism. Apparently, murder actually has a very low default recidivist rate because usually it's done under a very specific set of heated conditions that don't actually speak to a person's character, which makes you wonder a lot about like moral worth and what really drives a person to do that sort of thing. I think it's something we should look at critically, though I don't have any really strong database arguments. The last thing I want to say, because it's the first point that you brought up, is racial responses to the criminal justice system. I didn't forget. I'm actually going to triple down on this one, okay? Not only do I think that we should aggressively look at the ways our sentencing laws affect and discriminate between black and white people and Hispanic and Asian, I think we should do the same between men and women. Because as much as black people are shafted by the criminal justice system, men are even more. If you take a look at the disproportionate rates of sentencing, relative levels of implicit bias in the jury, women get off with way more than men
Vaush
do.
MRA confirmed.
Way more. So, I mean, maybe it's something we can all agree on. We're guys, I think.
Well, so the issue, though, is that when you remove race, it's just a matter of income or wealth. For example, if LeBron James goes in front of a jury, he's going to have the best lawyers. Mm-hmm. And obviously that's an extreme example, right? But O.J. Simpson had an all-star team. And so the problem is that...
Obama. He would also have good lawyers.
O.J. Simpson? Oh, yeah.
No,
sorry. I was going to say, you didn't have Obama's a lawyer.
No.
Let me just say...
Kardashian and Dershowitz.
I would just like to interject that Obama extrajudicially assassinated people and nobody did anything about it. So
now that's black privilege.
But
that's a joke. Don't.
But I think that there's an implication in your argument that I want to challenge, which is that just because you're poor doesn't mean you commit crimes. I think that's an insult to poor people, right? And so I think that if you automatically assume that, now there are data trends to suggest that, but instead it should be the question of what are we trying to structurally do or through incentives to either punish the people that are committing crimes and lift people out of that current level. So I think it's a good talking point, but I don't think it's totally true to say we have too many people in prison. I think we have the wrong people in prison. Let me tell you why. Really quick.
We have more than like any other country.
No. Let me tell you why. Huh? The average rapist serves 4 years in prison, and they're very likely to rape again. Totally different than murder.
Look, if you want funding that goes to police departments to go towards actually looking at the rape kits that they take rather than stuffing them into a bin.
250,000 untested rape kits in the tri-state area in New York City. 250,000, right? So our criminal justice system, you could say it had nefarious intentions. I'll be neutral on that. Was very heavy on drugs, obviously in the 80s and 90s. But generally, though, you cited the number. You said violent crime's been down since the 90s. Why do you think that is? It's because we were tough on crime in the 80s, and we had a massive campaign against it, and we had the most peaceful decade in American history.
Well, there were a few factors. The viability of broken windows policing has been challenged substantially, but there are admittedly some benefits. The argument that I would make is that what you're really doing is you're forestalling the problem. There are socioeconomic conditions that increase criminality, not because it makes people worse people, but just because oftentimes crime isn't some direct indicator of poor moral conduct. Oftentimes it is a crime of necessity, or it is a crime born of the discontent and the apathy.
So I got to challenge you on that. What would be a crime of necessity today with the welfare state that we have? What would possibly be a crime of necessity?
I can at least speak to personal experience that I knew some people involved in like they said they would sometimes peddle drugs, and they did it because while they may have been accounted for by the welfare state, their parents' medical bills weren't. Not sufficiently, not even close. Stuff like that. Now maybe legally if that person got arrested, the law says they have to be. I could never morally condemn them. They were trying to save their mom, man.
But I got to push back on that.
Sure.
I mean, for sure it's anecdotal, but
it is. So it's not like a data point.
I never understood this, having grown up on the South Side. Seeing people sell drugs is not the fastest and easiest way to make money for someone who's desperate. I mean, no joke.
Plasma sales? What would you say?
I made $140 per hour playing guitar in front of a baseball field. Now, I understand not everyone can play guitar.
Or skateboard.
True. I knew a guy who said he just bought T-shirts. He went and bought bulk T-shirts. So the people who are selling drugs, they got to buy the drugs first, or they get a loan, and you can do the same thing with socks. And then people go on the side of the road and sell socks. I think the choice of committing a crime was the choice.
Well, it is. Well, hold on. It is always a choice, but what we're really talking about is the limits of determinism here. How much do we choose the things we do? You can make an argument that it's all. I mean, you're religious, of course, so you wouldn't have this argument. But
I wouldn't have anything close to this argument.
Right. From a secular perspective, you can make the argument that at the end of the day, the things we do are driven entirely by the chemical reactions in our brain, and therefore everything that we do from start to finish is just a combination of random molecular patterns and blah blah. We don't live our lives like that. Obviously, I make a choice to get dressed every day. We know how this works in practice. But in practice, we are also the product of our environment. And the fact that, for example, having a single parent while growing up is a pretty strong criminal indicator is a suggestion that, I mean, is it an indicator of a person's inherent moral worth that they were born with a single parent? Probably not. So that statistical difference has to be accounted for by the inevitable fact that environmental differences can lead to harsh outcomes.
The question is, though, do you then create a set of lack of enforcement to say that we're actually not going to enforce looting, where you had an entire article in National Public Radio, not saying you believe this, that says the case for looting, right? San Francisco's basically employed this, $900 or less, they're not going to prosecute you, right? Videos of them stealing entire Walgreens, right? Not an exaggeration. And then you have, and just one other data point, just because of COVID, Europe's crime rates did not increase. Ours did. And we had a massive defund police, almost kind of we're going to be relaxed on criminality type movement. And this is the question, right? Which is how many excuses or accommodations are we going to give for crime?
Well, we're not.
And I'm just just to finish is that my perspective obviously is very little to none. Crime's a necessity. I could think of one, maybe two examples where I would make a moral claim of a crime of necessity, and that would be a revenge crime if someone murdered your wife or your kid. Maybe.
Necessity?
I'm not saying necessity. I'm saying like a moral accommodation where I could say I could see where they came from. Not necessity. Let me rephrase that. But the idea that in the welfare state that we have, with the private philanthropy kind of generosity we have, that shoplifting and arson and looting, mugging Barbara Boxer, that we should just say, it's actually because of the
I
environment.
don't know why you pointed at me when you
No,
said
I'm not-
I have never mugged Barbara
I'm
Boxer.
saying that as an example.
Yeah, I don't mean to. I don't.
Was that you in San Francisco?
Where were you?
Yeah. No, I've gotten stolen from in San Francisco before. It was a very fun experience. That was back before YouTube too, so I couldn't afford to replace anything. Okay, a lot to respond to here. Emil Durkheim, cool guy, dead now, thought that crime was sociologically useful because it shows you where the antagonisms are between people's wants and the state's desires. So crime takes place where there's an agitation between what people are being compelled to do by whatever, their own behavior, their desires, and what the state will allow you to do. So, for example, during a food shortage, we can take like Ireland during the potato famine. There were, to put it lightly, quite a few cases of theft during that time because people needed food. They would do anything for it. So the crime of theft in that instance becomes a sociological indicator of a social need that isn't being met. Now today, of course, we do have admittedly a fairly weak but existent welfare state.
It's rather
we do
strong.
have
It's very generous.
it's a little baby welfare
Multi-trillions
state.
of dollars every year.
Yeah, multi-trillion for America?
I will say
You can
this-
get
Quadrillions.
$70,000 in value a year. That's plenty.
I want a UBI. We can go way harder.
We do have UBI. We just implemented it with the stimulus.
No, we did. No, well, wait, hold on. Yes, the child
Yes, we
tax
did.
credits with well, no,
People
that's
got
really
cash
good.
checks. We have UBI now.
Well, it's not a long-standing program. It's
I'll
been a
admit that, but
temporary
we've
stimulus.
tried UBI and crime went up.
Well, hold on. Wait, hold on.
I just
Wait.
wanna-
I need to reject the
We
spurious.
send checks. People commit crimes. Huh.
Hold on. This is a spurious correlation, okay? First of all, you will not be able to find any analysis that attributes the increase in crime to people getting their stimulus checks.
No, I'm saying it's the opposite. The argument you're making is that if people have a sociological need, they won't commit the crime. So people got money and they still committed crimes.
Yeah, but it doesn't always like correspond one-to-one like that.
I
The reason
totally
why
agree.
people needed money is because they weren't getting any money from their jobs because they couldn't work their jobs. So people were still in a worse
Well,
position.
they also
than
got
would have been otherwise.
unemployment. Remember, very generous unemployment.
The unemployment started
plus
pretty generous.
$600 to $800, right? I think it was a week or a month, right? It was
It's
very
still
generous.
currently
That
a
run through,
$300
and not
bonus.
not everyone is applicable for unemployment. There are a lot of conditions there that can make that difficult.
No,
to
they were
apply
very
for.
generous. They didn't
Well,
turn
hold on,
anyone
wait,
down during
we're,
the lockdown.
We're very,
That's-
we're being very spurious with our.
Well, we're very
correlations
wonky.
right now.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I'm just
Oh God, where was I?
something about some dead guy about how crime is helpful.
I love dead white guys. That's my. I actually don't know if Durkheim was white. So I'm not pro-crime, not pro-criminal here. I'm pro-leniency only insofar as I believe it helps to lower our recidivism. Sometimes it finds that it does. For example, you're in prison for 20 years. What do you know? You know the inside of a jail cell. The environment in prison is very bad at encouraging people to get their life together when they get out. And that's why so many people, they get out of prison, they have 6 months on the street before they're back in. Sometimes it's because they want to go back in. Prison's all they know. They did a movie about that. Sorry.
Shawshank Redemption.
And it was a good movie.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, which only serves my point. But with regards to like being lax on crime or whatever, there are a couple of things I think we should all agree to. Okay, first of all, well, maybe we wouldn't. Drugs is bad. We need to stop locking people up for weed, just flat out. I think that drugs in general should be treated like a medical issue. Portugal did that. They decriminalized all drugs. So
There's conflicting data on Portugal, but fine.
it's pretty promising. So you take like heroin. Nobody wants to be on heroin, okay? If you're on heroin, in the fleeting moments you have in between your little sessions, you know something's up. So you treat that like a medical issue. Say, hey, we have government offices. You want to come by. That helps. Far fewer overdose deaths. And those people, they go ahead, they become socially productive. Bam. No crime. They contribute to the economy. It just works better than locking them up.
I wanted to say something you mentioned with UBI, you mentioned with the unemployment, the stimulus. First of all, we've actually had a really hard time hiring for specific work, like labor stuff, because nobody wants to work. And no joke, like I've been having conversations like every other day, like, can we find some people? And it's like, we can't find anybody. We got signs up and down all throughout the area where it's like, come in, open interviews.
So many.
We had over 800 flights canceled due to staffing shortages, and now we're facing fuel shortages because there's a trucker shortage. We're looking at this this unemployment stimulus thing where they're doing the $300 bonus. Now they're doing the child tax credit, which won't be for everybody. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing a correlation with massive job openings and people not taking these jobs.
I think it's phenomenal. Finally, the bargaining power is in the hands of the workers more so.
It's broken. Like the flights are shutting down. Nobody wants the jobs, even when they do increase the salaries.
So it's true, the flights are an issue. But here's what they don't tell you in the news briefs. So stock buybacks, something that many companies now do because of their decriminalization, the airline companies have spent an anomalous amount of their profits each year on stock buybacks to enrich their CEOs and shareholders rather than on hiring more pilots. It seems the issue here is this is a simple supply-demand issue. People need to raise their wages. You see these news stories from time to time where it's like, I raised my wage to $15 an hour, and people showed up. And it's like, yeah, that is how economics works.
We had John Schnatter, Papa John, on the show, and he told us a story about a pizzeria where they were paying $35 an hour to some of their pizza cooks or bakers. Because that was a line. He kept trying to find people. Nobody would do it. He kept raising wages. Finally, he settled on $35 an hour. That means pizzas are going to basically more than double because the wage they were paying before was like 15, and now they're over double what they were paying in labor. Their labor costs go up. They have no choice but to charge substantially more for pizza. In the short term, within a month or so, that might have an impact on those pizza makers. But the ripple effect is going to slam into everybody. All of a sudden, the contractor can't afford to take his family out for dinner. He can't afford to buy the food he wants, because the base level costs are going to start going up. Then the landlords aren't going to be able to hire the maintenance crews to fix the buildings. The landlords are on fixed pricing, which they can't change, which then results in a brick wall, a collapse.
I just want to say what we're having right now is an unprecedented economic shock. For a year, nobody worked, or very few people worked. And people got used to staying at home. And as the government should, it should have done more, but as the government should, it took care of them a little bit. We have to ride this out. What are government funds for but riding us out through common crises? Better this than war. And now people are returning to work, and they're realizing work sucks. Work sucks everywhere. But in this country, compared to maybe some of our equally developed contemporaries, work really sucks. The work culture, our rate of overproductivity, the Americans more than any other developed country, by the way, we push our workers hard. And you have favorable employment numbers, but you don't have favorable underemployment numbers. There are a lot of people who have jobs, but they have like 2 to 3 part-time jobs. They don't get their schedule for the next month until like 2 weeks before the end of the current one. They're constantly worrying about whether or not they're going to make their shifts line up to get enough hours to get the money they need to pay down their student debt along with their rent and everything. It sucks, and it's untenable, and we are in an era of unprecedented record profits for CEOs. So yes, I think the solution to this, and it'll be a rough one, that's for sure, is we should normalize higher wages. Maybe the solution to $15 an hour was never a federal mandate. Maybe it was the inevitable economic necessity of incentivizing workers.
Hard to disagree with a lot of that. I will say that the lockdowns were way too harsh and intense. I will say there is a Fifth Amendment argument to be made, though, that if the government forces you to not work, then you should be able to get something in return. The government cannot take something from you constitutionally and not pay you for it. That's the eminent domain argument, right? Which was one of the best arguments for the stimulus package. I just think the lockdowns were far too severe and far too intense and really infringed on people's liberties and abilities to be able to take risks.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.